Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is a prep coach. Today's guest is Derek Natcher. Derek, welcome to the podcast.
How you doing?
I'm doing awesome, man. So looking forward to kind of getting to know you a little bit more, Derek. Before we kind of get into your story, I would like to know who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
Favorite bodybuilders of all time? I'd have to go with, first Ronnie, because he's the greatest of all time. After that, I'd probably have to say Jay Cutler, Dorian Yates, and Marcus Rowell. I like the freaks. I like the guys that put on a lot of muscle. I don't think we have so many of them these days, but it was a cool era to come up in and see.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget about Marcus Rowell, but that's kind of the era that I kind of grew up in, and he was a freak of all freaks, huh?
Yeah, he was the freak of all freaks. And his attitude towards bodybuilding was just always kind of a looser, more of a clown type of guy, and I always appreciated that.
Yeah, very cool, man. Love that. Okay, so at what age did you start lifting weights, Derek? And then why did you start lifting weights at that specific age?
I started being interested in weight training around like 10 years old, pretty young. I wasn't allowed to touch them until I was 12. And it was just a simple barbell setup in a back room of my house that my dad had from when he was a bit younger. I just wanted to get bigger and be better at sports. You know, you come up at, 10, 11, 12 years old, and you start to see the more mature guys that have a little bit of muscle, and what young guy's not attracted to that?
Right. Now, how did you kind of get exposed to weight training at 10, but you weren't able to start actually until 12? But how did you kind of figure out, like, hey, I want to start lifting weights around that 10-year-old mark?
I saw athletes, high school athletes training in the gym, and I was very interested in it. But my parents didn't really understand it, and I think at the time, the education was that if you start lifting weights too soon, you'd fuse your growth plates, you'd stop, growing properly. So they were very cautious in letting me do what I kind of wanted to do, and made me wait until I was 12. And I had some help from a local chiropractor at the time, and he kind of helped me get started and convinced my parents that it was okay to train just the proper way.
Awesome. It's always nice to have a doctor encourage you in something that maybe your parents don't want you to do, right?
Right. They're a little more convincing than a 10 or 12-year-old kid.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I love that. Okay, so talk a little bit more, Derek. I want to get into your childhood a little bit more. So I'm assuming you did play sports. So talk about some of the sports that you played. I'm assuming that you probably had great parents and had a pretty good upbringing, but just talk about that childhood up to about high school, please.
Yeah, I played a lot of sports. So I lived in the country, first off, so I didn't have neighbors that I could just run over and play with. So my parents felt it was very important to socialize me, and they put me in a lot of sports. So I played baseball, soccer, basketball, football, wrestled for a bit. There's really three seasons for a kid in sports, and I had a sport at every single one of those seasons. In terms of my childhood, I have nothing really negative to say. I really did have great parents that instilled hard work into me. I watched both my parents work very hard from a young age, and that got passed along right into me. So,
okay. Now, I know you're in Florida now, but did you grow up in Florida? Did you grow up somewhere else? Because you said growing up in the country.
Yeah, I grew up outside of Pittsburgh, PA, about an hour and a half. It's an hour now, but it was at the time an hour and a half away from Pittsburgh, surrounded by cornfields. So, country boy.
Okay, there we go. I can relate. I'm in Iowa, so I get that. Now, I know that you have a master's degree. So before we kind of get to the college talk, though, did your parents stress the importance of grades? Was that something that you just enjoyed in terms of school? Talk about school a little bit, middle school, high school age.
Yeah, there was an expectation to get good grades. I grew up just knowing that I'd be in trouble if I came home with C's. So it was A's or B's. I was generally an intelligent kid, so I never had to work too hard at it. But we did value academics. There was an expectation there. But I always enjoyed going to school. I never really was a guy that was looking to skip. I like to learn.
Yeah, cool. Only child, or do you have siblings?
No, I have an older sister and a younger sister.
Okay.
So I was stuck right in the middle.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're the middle child, so that's cool. Okay. Out of all the sports that you played in high school, what was your favorite? What was that sport that you really, really enjoyed, Derek?
Enjoyed most was football. just the training aspect, the aggressiveness, the ability to be very physical attract me. Now, I was better at track and field. I'm just kind of multifaceted athlete, and I excelled there more than football, but I enjoyed football the most.
Okay. What did you run or do in track for field events if you did
The
those?
110 hurdles, and then I was a jumper, a long triple jump and high jump.
Okay, cool, man. Got some speed and explosiveness then. Cool. Okay, so when you were in high school, what were you thinking about you wanted to do or be when you quote unquote grew up, or what were you thinking about in terms of going to college? And then once you actually graduated, did life take you in that direction, or did it take you in another direction?
Well, I had no real idea what I wanted to do in high school. I thought I wanted to be a cop. So I wanted to be a part of the police force. So I went to college for criminal justice. As you see, though, life did not take me exactly in that direction.
Okay. So your undergraduate degree was in criminal justice then?
Correct.
Okay. So how did you kind of shift then into getting a master's degree in exercise physiology? Talk about that shift or that change at some point in your life.
So I got my degree, my undergrad degree, and immediately out of college, I got a job working in a prison. And very quickly, I realized that that was not what I wanted to do. I was being spit on for a pretty low pay, and I just realized within about a month that that wasn't what I wanted to do. And I had already competed in bodybuilding for a few different seasons at this point, and I was helping people on the side. And I realized that I was making almost as much money just helping people get ready for contests already while I was working in a prison. And I realized that if I just focused on that side and got my education focused in that direction, that I could probably make something out of the fitness industry.
Okay. Now, so then I want to kind of just, since we're kind of there, we're going to talk about kind of like the business of coaching, and then we're going to kind of take a step back and get into the bodybuilding talk. So, did you actually just at some point determine, hey, I'm gonna quit this job at the prison and I'm gonna go, I froze up, I'll come back, I can still see you. Okay. Did you decide at some point that you were just gonna quit the prison job and then go full-time with the coaching? Like, walk us through that for a little bit, Derek.
Oh yeah, really quickly, working in the prison, I realized I didn't want to do it. Like 2 weeks in, I was pretty sure that this wasn't the right fit for me. And then I didn't necessarily think that coaching was going to be the route I took. I wanted to train people. I wanted to work with athletes. I actually wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach. So I geared my education going back to school towards being a strength and conditioning coach. My internship was with the college, with their football team. I wanted to work with athletes. And I just, at the time going through college, or my master's degree, I was working with bodybuilders and I just excelled there. So my career, I guess you want to call it, just kind of took that trajectory.
Okay, cool. So then let's take a step back then. Talk a little bit about when you first got exposed to bodybuilding, because that's different than training for like athletics. And then, walk us through starting to get into bodybuilding, training like a bodybuilder, and actually competing.
I went over in high school to a friend's house. The chiropractor that actually got me into lifting, I was friends with his son. I went over to his house and he had rented on pay-per-view back when bodybuilding shows were still on pay-per-view. He rented the Arnold Classic. And I think I was a sophomore in high school, maybe a junior. And we watched the Arnold Classic. And I remember Gunther Schleikamp walked across the stage and had those massive basketball lats and just had the craziest physique I've ever seen of a tall guy. And I'm 6 foot. So I always looked at myself as a little bit bigger than the average bodybuilder that you'd see. And I just saw him on stage towering over these guys, and he was still big and full and he had a crazy look to him. And I really, at that point, I remember my mind shifting towards, okay, I'd like to see what kind of muscle I can put on my frame. So that was the initial exposure to wanting to shift into bodybuilding a little bit with myself, away from sports specific training. Okay.
And so then when did you decide you were going to compete first?
Freshman year of college. So pretty quickly into, getting out of high school and getting on my own and starting to make all my own decisions in life, I decided I wanted to control my diet 100% and apply it towards competing, which I competed the summer after my freshman year of college. So I dieted in the dorms on a George Foreman grill.
That's awesome. And I used to have a George Foreman in the dorm rooms, and that's how I'd cook my chicken breasts, and people would be complaining because it smelled. And I was like, well, I don't care. Like, I got to get my bodybuilding food in, so.
Yeah, they complained about me as well because it stunk everything up. So the resident that watched over all of us and let us do what we were allowed to do, he gave me one day. I was allowed to meal prep in the dorms one day on Sundays. I had to open all the windows. So I'd cook all my food for a week and stick it in this little tiny college freezer. And everything was freezer burnt and terrible, but I still got it done.
Awesome, man. Love that. I used to also take cans of tuna like to class, and that would just get everybody mad, but yeah. I just didn't care. So that's awesome, man. Now, I'm assuming that you prepped yourself for this first competition, and then did you enjoy the process? Did you enjoy being on stage? Walk us through like that actual first competition.
Yeah, I prepped myself. I got a very small sliver of information from a local bodybuilder that had just won the Mr. Pittsburgh title. He was helping a friend of mine that was going to be prepping at the same time as me, and I just took what he told him and I applied it to myself. Luckily, it did work, and I got lean. Certainly not optimal, certainly not ideal. Looking back, I could have did everything differently and probably a little bit better, but I got lean, and I competed, and I did love the process. I love that I was in control of it. You can apply yourself to your nutrition, and you can force a specific result out of the body. And I just thought that was pretty incredible.
Very cool. Now, I'm assuming, being 6 foot and getting pretty shredded, and I'm assuming you're probably natural at the time. I mean, you were probably a pretty thin guy at that point, weren't you?
Yeah, 187 pounds was my contest weight. At 6 foot, I was a teen, so I was still 19, but it was a stringy look. I mean, there's no beat around the bush there. I think it would be not even considered. Nobody would ever tell me to do bodybuilding at that point. They would say do classic physique. Yeah, it was a stringy, pretty small look at 6 foot.
Okay. All right. So then after that first competition, when did you compete next, Derek?
I took, I guess, 2 full years off. So I didn't compete for 2 seasons. But that was the mindset back then. So I know in today's day and age, competitors are almost expected to compete yearly. But when I got started in 2006, bodybuilders were staying covered up. They didn't want to show themselves, and everybody was taking, 1 to 2 year off seasons just so they could make sure that they made progress between contests. So all the people around me were older school bodybuilders. They were saying, take some time, put some muscle on, which I needed. And then I came back in 2008 and did another contest.
Okay, cool. And how did that 2008 competition go? How much muscle did you put on?
I weighed in there about 200 pounds. So put about 13 pounds of muscle on from my first contest to my second. I wasn't as conditioned. So there was some muscle accrued. How much, I couldn't tell you exactly.
Okay. And did you prep yourself for that one as well? Or did you actually have a coach for that one?
Nope, that one was all by myself as well.
Okay. Have all of your competitions that you've done been self-coached?
No. So after that second show, from that point on, I always had somebody looking over my process and making the calls for me.
Okay. Now, so I'm 35. I graduated high school in 2006. So I'm assuming we're probably around the same age. So back then, information was very limited. We didn't jump on YouTube. We didn't have Instagram. You had like Arnold Schwarzenegger's bodybuilding Bible and, forums and things like that and some websites. How did you, in those first competitions, how did you kind of like, I know you said you had like a local bodybuilder help you a little bit, just give you a little bit of information, in that first show, but how did you begin over the years before you got a coach to gain some of that bodybuilding knowledge? How did you know how to train? Walk us through some of that, because it was a lot different back then than it is now, Derek.
I'd have to say bodybuilding.com forums, honestly. That was, I think, the easiest route to just get information. But I pretty quickly realized that bodybuilding.com was mostly, guys my age that didn't know what they were doing, acting like they knew what they were doing. So I moved away from that into some of the more serious forums. Never was a guy that posted. I just kind of read and soaked up as much as I could. Muscle Mayhem was a good forum back then. Pro Muscle, Professional Muscle. I think that might have been a little bit later. I can't remember exactly the forums that I was on, but I was reading forums and figuring out who kind of really knew what they were doing, and I would send some direct messages and try to get talking with guys that were very clearly more advanced than some of the other posters.
Yeah, right. Now, back in the beginning of kind of like this bodybuilding journey or experience, did you have any, goals to like turn pro, or were you just kind of going along and enjoying it? Like, talk about that for a quick minute.
No, so I never being pro. It was never a focus for me. Not once. I trained freshman year all the way through my senior year of college with a genetic freak, and I got to see what people meant when they said, bodybuilding is genetics, because we'd eat the same. We'd eat the same. We were going through the exact same training workouts, but I never quite looked like him. So Jason Janoff, shout out to you, my man. So I got to see pretty quickly in my bodybuilding journey that, genetics did matter in a big way. So I came to the conclusion I wasn't really genetically elite pretty quickly, and I was always just okay doing my best, giving everything I had and just seeing where the cards fell.
Okay. Now, did you always compete in the NPC, or was there a point where you decided that you were going to start competing in the NPC? And did you ever go the enhanced route? Like, if you don't mind, talk about that for a minute.
So I started in the NPC. I competed in 2006, 2008 in the NPC, fully natural. And then I was kind of exposed to the fact that there were natural contests, and I went in that direction and competed in other organizations and took it as far as I could. I turned pro in the NGA and the OCB, which is the IFPA, or at least was at the time. I've lost track with all the natural federations. But spending some time in the natural federations, I just, as much as people complain about politics and bodybuilding, I saw it a lot less in the NPC. The numbers in NPC shows made it worth prepping and competing. You'd show up to a natural show and there'd be two people in your class, and one person looked like they started prep last week. It just wasn't a great experience for me. You got to the pro level and it was all very genetically elite guys, where having a wider waist and being young and immature, I just couldn't compete. I wasn't competitive there. And natural bodybuilding actually destroyed my hormonal profile in 2010. I prepped very, very hard. 2011. I pushed my body to the absolute limit naturally, and it destroyed my hormonal profile. I tried to get back naturally, and I never fully got it back to a spot that I was happy with. And I moved into TRT at that point, and I just didn't feel TRT was fair in a natural bodybuilding arena, even though the rules are very gray. So I moved completely away from competing naturally.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. So let's talk a little bit about why did you decide after your first competition, Derek, to get yourself a coach? What was the mindset there?
After my second contest, I decided to get a coach just because I was spending even more time researching, and realized a lot of the people towards the top were talking about the fact that when you're pushed to that level, you just can't, look at yourself in the right state of mind. And one day you're thinking you're fat and you're doing more cardio, and the next day you think you're ahead and you're pulling back, and it's just kind of a mess. You need an outside set of eyes. So I decided in 2010 to hand the reins over to a coach and let them make the calls.
And how was that?
I learned a lot. I learned a ton doing that. So in 2010, once I prepped with a coach, I learned a lot. Just having that different set of eyes and different methods of going about things. So I learned so much that I kind of realized that it was always going to be beneficial to have somebody else help, at least being a second set of eyes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay. Now, how long did you compete for? Are you done competing? Like, talk about that. What do you feel like was your highlight up to this point as a competitive bodybuilder, Derek?
I started in 2006. My last contest was 2018. I don't know if I'm done yet. My body's not quite what it was. I'll never be as good as I was in 2016, 2015. I know I've seen my best at this point, just because I can't train the way I'd really like to or needed to be my best. I don't know if I'm done completely. I think I might have a master's run in me. Being 35 now, I'm an old man and I can compete in the master's category. I love bodybuilding. So I just love bodybuilding. I love the process. I love the suffer and prep. As weird as that sounds, that challenge really brings out something in me that nothing else has ever made me feel or brought out of me. So I don't know if I'm done yet. I'd say probably my biggest accomplishment Getting my natural pro card felt pretty rewarding at the time. But I think the look that I brought in 2016 was probably my biggest accomplishment, though it didn't place. It didn't win any contests that year. It was my best look and what I'm probably most proud of.
Okay, cool, man. Awesome. Now we're gonna get into a little bit of coaching talk, but I want to kind of tie it together with you. So, you worked with coaches after your first competition. What is the value? And you kind of touched on a little bit where, when you have a coach, they're going to see things and be able to control things that when you try to do it on your own in the middle of a prep, it's just tough, right? You kind of mentioned that, but outside of that, what is the value? What was the value for you to having bodybuilding coaches, prep coaches when you were a competitor? And what is the value of somebody hiring a coach now if they want to compete?
I think I'm pretty mentally sound. So I think a lot of the value of having a coach is just someone to keep you locked in mentally where you need to be. I never really needed that myself. I needed somebody to just tell me what to do and I could run with it. So I was a very easy client for every coach I've ever had. Just here's my pictures, here's what I'm doing, here's what I feel, tell me what to do and change it. So that's probably the biggest value of a coach is the fact that, somebody else is making the calls and getting you where you need to be without you having to slave over it in your head or even question the calls being made. You just can just trust somebody and just having that and not having to have the turmoil of whether you're making the right or wrong decisions brings stress way down in prep, which we all know is super, super important. But everybody's a little different. As a coach myself, I know that everybody needs something a little bit different. Somebody needs told they're doing, negative reinforcement. Some people respond to that. Some people respond to, being told they're doing exactly what's needed. And the mental side is a huge, huge benefit as well.
How do you, now, obviously I know that each client is different and they have different needs, but generally speaking, do you have kind of like a general coaching philosophy or way that you like to approach the majority of clients? What does that look like for you?
I think just being able to communicate very openly with a coach or with your coach or with a client is super important. Just keeping them in touch with reality, whether if they're off plan. I'm not a coach that really ever yells at people. I just tell them, this is what this is going to bring, and just keeping them in touch with the reality of their decisions or where they're at. If they're behind in prep, they need to know that. If they're ahead, they need to know that. Just being very open and talking directly and kind of trying to separate your feelings from that. I think that would be my overall general approach.
Okay, cool. So now let's talk about like becoming a bodybuilding prep coach, however you want to word all that. Like, when did you actually go full in with this, Derek? And just walk us through those steps a little bit, please.
Full time happened in 2015. I was training people in the gym as a personal trainer while I was coaching people just to make enough income. And then in 2015, when I started to compete for the Mr. Pittsburgh, I had a different look that year and started to post on social media. And the attention on social media kind of exploded everything for me and got enough attention where my inbox was full. And I could make a lot more money spending time focused on online clients and coaching them than training people in person, which is very time consuming. Anybody that trains in person knows you have to spend at least an hour with somebody, and you can't do anything else for that hour. So in 2015, I shifted towards coaching full time.
Okay.
Simply out of necessity. I didn't have time to be in the gym with the amount of clients that I was getting online.
Okay. And so how did you pivot? Because I own a gym and train people in person. So practically speaking, how did you pivot from training people in person to training people online? Did you just take the clients or the people that were reaching out through Instagram and social media and kind of run with it? Did you build a website? Like, walk us through those steps, please.
So I ran with it. I just loaded, onboarded people and went through my process. I really didn't look at it in terms of like an official business until I met a girl that was very business minded, and she was looking at what I was doing and couldn't understand why I didn't have a website or have a name behind it. So she kind of helped me shift everything towards more of a business mindset. I kind of always said, like, I feel like I'm a good coach, but the business aspect of it is just I don't love that. So I've had some help there. And that's where that shift really came from.
Okay. What was it about, was it 2015? You said you started gaining some, notoriety on social media because of your actual look, you know, in terms of your prep. What was it? Was it just like your vascularity or something, or what was it that really drew people to you, during that prep?
Well, I went from a 200-pound, sub 200-pound natural competitor, which I think people kind of associated my look with, which was a stringier, natural look. TRT put a good significant more amount of muscle on me. So anybody that says TRT is the same as natural bodybuilding, that's just not reality. And I saw that for myself. So my physique filled out a good bit more, optimized hormonal levels versus very suboptimal is quite a difference. So I started to carry some mass to my look, and it was just much more filled out, more impressive look.
Okay.
And I'm a conditioning guy. So coming from a natural bodybuilding background, you have to know how to get conditioned, fully conditioned, shredded glutes. So I was bringing a significant amount of muscle in with a very conditioned physique, which is just impressive.
Right. Awesome, man. Now let's, since we're on the topic of kind of social media, how do you utilize social media nowadays? Is it still the same way of like posting up people's progress pictures and people reach out? Like, talk about the strength and maybe some of the weaknesses or drawbacks of social media for coaching.
Social media is great for coaching. I don't utilize it to its full benefit anymore. At this point, most of my coaching is word of mouth. I've always tried to just focus on doing a really good job for people. And that's carried on. So people talk about you if you do a good job, and you can get clients that way. So everyone thinks that you have to be on social media to get clients and be a coach. And I'm on social media, I'm present, I interact, but I don't post very much myself at all. And I don't post a ton of my clients. I do at times, but not. I'm pretty underactive on social media generally. But it is a very, very valuable tool to get yourself out there, show your abilities, and show what you can do.
Now, do you have a website now, and how important is it to have a website if you want to be a legit coach?
Yeah, teamloud.com. I think that websites are so easy to create at this point. You're just being left in the dust if you don't have one. I don't know if it's necessarily needed to become a serious coach. I know some top level coaches out there that don't have a website. Their name alone carries them. But I think it'd be pretty crazy for anybody to try to start a coaching business and not have a website at this point.
Right, right. Where did you come up with your coaching team name? Team Loud, you said, right?
Yeah. So Loud was just an acronym that me and my buddy Rob in college used, and it stood for Live Out Your Dreams. And I just took it, had a local tattoo artist that owed me a favor, draw me up a logo, and we kind of just ran with it as the business name.
Okay, awesome, man. That's pretty cool. Now, in terms of like, you've had your own coaches. Outside of those people, have you had any other type of mentors? Do you think people that want to get into coaching, like doing some sort of mentorship with a coach is important? Like, talk about that, because that seems to be what a lot of these coaches are doing now. Prep coaches, they're offering, and I know why, because there's an opportunity to make more money, right?
Right.
But they're offering these mentorships, and I've never done any of them, but I see a lot of these coaches advertising them on Instagram. So walk us through that. Did you do any mentorships or have anybody that really helped you in the coaching space? Maybe it was one of your coaches. Talk about that, Derek.
I never really had a direct mentor. I would say more, I just formed a relationship with people I thought I could learn from and soaked up what I could, which I guess is mentorship. But it was never an official mentorship type thing. That didn't exist when I was coming up and learning. I see guys doing that now. And if I was coming up and trying to learn as much as possible, as quickly as possible, that would be a very direct way to do it. And I think there's a lot of value there. I don't mentor coaches myself. I bring coaches that I think could really do a good job on, and then I mentor them directly under me. So they're associated with my business. Okay. But no, I never actually had a direct mentor. I do have a lot of friends in the industry that I feel like I can just reach out to, talk to, present a client or an issue, and just talk with them about what I think, what they think, and sometimes just listening to other coaches that you trust opinion can kind of shift your mindset, and you can take something from that. So yeah, just more relationship building.
Yeah. Who are a couple of those guys that you can reach out to if you need a little help or guidance or clarification on something?
Um, Someone in terms of business that I always lean on would be Ryan Blakely. He runs District Coaching Concepts, and everybody knows Johnny Castellina. He's one of my best friends, and I can lean on him anytime I need to help me with clients, or the same goes for him. He calls me and we just talk about people sometimes. So those two really are my main two guys that I go to.
Okay, awesome, man. Now, when you work with people, is it all encompassing? Do you just do like the nutrition? Is there nutrition and training and the supplementation? Like, how do you approach that?
Everything. So when I work with somebody, I kind of want to control all aspects of the process. So training, nutrition, supplementation, cardio, um, sleep, stress reduction, everything. Now, there's certain people that'll reach out just for training, just for nutrition, and so if I'm not super busy, I'll consider that. But for the most part, I like to keep all my coaching completely encompassing.
Okay. Okay. Now, training. How did you start off training? How did it evolve when you were competing? And then is that now how you kind of like to train your clients? Is how you train currently yourself, or how does that evolve?
So I started out training very ignorantly, watching the bodybuilders, the top bodybuilders videos they were putting out, which we all know now was just kind of insane stuff to get a reaction out of people. Bodybuilding was super hardcore, and the training they were presenting was super hardcore, and I thought that's what was needed. And as a natural athlete, looking back at some of the training that I did initially, it was just insane. So no, I made a lot of mistakes, and it's kind of why I'm in the position I'm in now with my shoulder and back being in such rough position. So I started out wrong. I learned through my own education that I was training improperly, and fixed a lot of that. And I think I've been able to save a lot of my clients a lot of years of injury and wear and tear based on my own mistakes.
Yeah. What is kind of like your training philosophy now then for your clients? What does that look like?
I'm progressive overload based. I think that's an important aspect to focus on. But every client's a little different. So I'm not going to treat a natural athlete the same as an enhanced athlete. I'm not going to treat a woman the same as a man. Depends on what class you're competing in. Really, everybody's going to be completely different. I work with some fighters, some wrestlers, some sports guys, so they're very sports specific. Everybody's got to be trained in a very specific way for them, and then the feedback given based on that training needs to be adjusted around that feedback.
Okay. Now, in terms of like recovery and that type of stuff, like the chiropractic work, tissue work, is that stuff that you highly recommend your clients, especially like the competitors and the athletes, to partake in? Like, what's your take on that type of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Tissue work is super, super important. Massage, recovery in general. So yeah, I encourage all those things. There's a realization that most people don't have the funds needed to stay fully up on their recovery. So I try to instill self-recovery a lot. Now, you should get in with a massage therapist as much as possible. At least I believe that. And keep, those adhesions minimized as much as possible. But most people can't afford it weekly. So you really need to learn how to use lacrosse ball, foam rollers, things for self-release, and to keep your own recovery in a good spot.
Absolutely, man. Okay, so you said earlier that you love coaching, but you don't necessarily enjoy the business side of things. What is it kind of specifically that you just don't like about the business side of the coaching stuff?
I don't hate it. It's just if we didn't live in a monetary society and we could all just do what we love, and I think I'd prefer kind of that type of world where I wasn't dealing with the money. I could just help people. Yeah, I don't know what exactly I'm trying to say there. I just know that I love coaching. I love making those decisions. I like making those adjustments, getting people signed up and getting their payments processed. Like that's kind of mind numbing zombie type stuff for me. So more just a basic comment.
Okay. No, that's cool. And I get exactly what you're saying because, I'm kind of in a transition period in my own life right now where I'm selling my gym. I'm moving back to Colorado and there's so much stuff that I want to do. And the thing that just continues to reoccur in my mind is like, I just want to help people, right? Like I just, and obviously with the health and the fitness side of things, that's my passion, one of my passions, but it's like, I just want to help people, but you have to be able to help people and you have to some way, you have to make money, right? Because you have bills to pay and all that. So
Right.
I mean, that might be vague for some people, what you just said, but I definitely get what you're saying because, for me, I'm in a small town, small gym and, got a handful of personal training clients. And then you're like, for me, it's like you're chasing people to pay you. And it's just, it's that side of thing where it's so annoying and it's so distracting. It takes away. And it's like, dude, like, I just want to help people. I don't want money to be an issue for anybody because I want people to be reach their fullest potential. Right. But that's not the world we're living in. So
If you figure that out, let me know. Yeah. If you figure that out, let me know.
Yeah. And vice versa. You let me know too, Derek. Now we're going to start kind of wrapping things up, but I want to touch on a few more things. Now you got your master's degree. Do you feel like getting that master's degree has benefited you in any way in terms of being a prep coach, an online coach? Could you have done all of this without that master's degree? Talk about that because I have my own opinion with formal education.
Is it needed? No. I'm a guy that appreciates higher education myself. I think there's value in being able to apply yourself to something like that. A graduate degree is not easy. You have to be able to research. You have to be able to prove you can research. You have to be able to prove that you can take a complex issue and resolve that, or at least approach it. So needed, absolutely not. I know tons of very good and successful prep coaches that only graduated high school. In today's day and age, we have the internet, which is all the world's information at your fingertips. So you can get on your phone and really learn anything you want. So if you want to learn something bad enough now, you don't need college. Now, that being said, it did help me get started. People see that you've got your master's degree, and that holds weight in people's decision-making process. So it did help me close some of my initial clients. And I learned a good bit about mechanics and the body through that education, but needed, absolutely not. I think I still would be able to get to the point I was at now without it.
Okay, perfect. I know I froze up again, but I'm still here. Now I want to ask you, do you have like a long-term goal or long-term vision, Derek, for kind of like your coaching? Do you want to be a coach for the next 20 or 30 years? Do you want to, get into other industries? What's your perspective on that?
No, I love what I do. So I'd like to bring more of the medical side to it with time, which are the plans for the next 5 years. Just because I'm sending a lot of clients to different doctors to handle their TRT, recovery, the BPC, TB, peptides in general. And I just feel like the care overall isn't there. The medical industry tends to be for profit, and the focus is on for profit. So I'd like to take loud and shift it a little bit towards the medical side as well. But no, I plan on doing what I'm doing for the long haul.
Okay. And what do you mean by kind of shifting it towards the medical side of things, like having like a TRT clinic or something like that? Yeah. Or what are you referring to?
Yeah, just a TRT, peptide, general rehabilitation, rejuvenation type a clinic.
Okay, cool. What are I don't know how much you pay attention to kind of like the coaching industry as a whole. If you do a little bit, what are some of the things that you that kind of annoy you about the coaching industry? What are some of the things that you wish would kind of change, or if maybe there was like an overall education system for coaching, online coaching? Like, talk about that.
I don't want to sound too negative. I'm just not a negative person in general. But just the regurgitation in the industry just makes me kind of sick. One of the big reasons why I pulled away from social media is just because I think it's turned, there's a lot of good out there in social media, but a lot of it's just a clown show where people are just taking what one good coach says, and you got 20 people immediately after regurgitating that same information, hanging up a black curtain and putting up a fancy camera with a light on them. So kind of people that have no background or can present themselves as an expert. I think that's a problem with social media. But I think anybody with a brain at this point can differentiate between the people that know what they're doing, that have a track record, and some of these people just starting up and acting like experts.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely clouded out there. Now, do you have a personal goal of like, like with a bodybuilding client, right? Do you want to put somebody on the Olympia stage if you haven't already? Win the Olympia? Like, do you have like goals for yourself personally with clients, or are you just trying to turn out the best clients individually? Reach their potential.
Yeah, so I've never been a coach that hunts for genetics or tries to get these elite athletes. I like developing people. So like most of my pros, I tend to get before they're really good and develop them into the pros that they are. But I'm not a guy that's ever going to be sliding into DMs of really good top competitors and trying to get their attention and trying to get them to work with me. I'll work with anybody that wants to work really hard and apply themselves. That's ultimately who I want to work with most, is the people that want it, whether they're a good athlete or they're terrible. That doesn't bother me at all. It's kind of the willingness to work really hard. Now, I always like getting to the Olympia. I've had 2 athletes in the Olympia so far. I have goals of that this year with a few of my top female pros. But ultimately, I always just want to enable people to bring their absolute best package. That's my job. Whether that's a first-time competitor, whether that's a MMA fighter that needs to make weight but still perform, or that's an Olympia level athlete. Ultimately, I just need to bring them in as optimally as possible, and that's my focus.
Okay. Easier to work with, males or females?
There's all kinds of personalities out there.
I know. Don't give me that one. That's what all the coaches say when I put them on the spot.
I tend to work a little bit better with females. I think just because there's no pushback, at least not as much pushback. But no, I work well with all different types. I don't think sex really matters there.
You seem like a pretty mellow, chill guy, and I think if you want to be a great coach, you got to be, right? Because you're, like you said, you have so many different people and personalities. So you kind of just got to go with the flow sometimes, right, Derek?
Sometimes. Now, I know some coaches that have way different personalities than me, way more hardcore, way harder on people, yell at people, and they get results too. So there's many different personalities in terms of type of client as well as coaching. And if you're a person that just needs somebody that's super direct and blunt and mean, and there are people out there that respond really well to that, there's coaches that are like that and that get great results. So I don't think anything, client or coaching, is a one size fits all, or this is the best type.
Yeah,
you got to find your fit. You got to find your fit.
For sure, for sure. Now we're gonna wrap it up here. Now I want to ask you, Derek, outside of coaching and bodybuilding and kind of that whole world, are there any other hobbies that you have? Is there anything else that you kind of like to do just to check out of the bodybuilding world for a quick minute?
I got a lot of plans. I know that's kind of weird for a guy to say, but I love botany, and I love to surf. So in 2018, I kind of made a decision to not worry about being so big all the time, and I kind of downsized a little bit and pulled my weight back just to get a little healthier overall, line my blood work up, and that enabled me to get a lot of my athleticism back. And I live right here at the beach in Florida, so I get to jump in the water and surf as much as possible.
Okay, cool, man. Do you feel like, Derek, I think it's hard for people that are really entrenched in bodybuilding and are pushing hard for a long time. It's hard, just like any other sport. You see with people in the NFL and NBA, like when they retire or step away. I mean, we saw it with Tom Brady, right? He retired last year and then he came back and then he's retired again. I mean, our identity gets wrapped up in what we do, right? Especially with the bodybuilding, because you kind of gotta, I mean, it's 24/7, 365. So 2 questions. When you kind of pulled back in 2018 to get yourself healthier, was that hard for you to do? But then once you kind of moved in that direction, have you really enjoyed kind of not being so, engulfed or consumed with the actual competing side of bodybuilding yourself?
What was the first question again?
Was it hard for you to pull back to kind of focus on your health when you were so entrenched in competitive bodybuilding in 2018?
It was hard. Yeah, absolutely. Downsizing after spending so many years trying to put muscle on, that was tough to watch that process happen. And it didn't feel great initially. Being that I came from a natural background though, and knew what my physique was going to shift to, I knew what to expect. So that made it a little bit easier. So yeah, it was difficult at first. I think anybody that spends the amount of time is needed to put on a significant amount of muscle, when that starts to come off, that's going to bother anybody, especially when you love bodybuilding and you love being a little bit bigger. So yeah, it was tough, but you weather your way through that.
Okay. Cool, man. All right, I think we'll end it there, Derek. I want to make sure I get you out of here on the time that you requested. So before I do a quick outro, I do let you go. If you have any final thoughts, any final words, give us your Instagram, any shout outs. I'm going to turn it over to you. Platform's yours. I'll do a quick outro and I'll let you go. So whatever you got for us in closing.
Oh, I just appreciate you having me on, getting to talk bodybuilding a little bit. My Instagram is drock240. My business page is Loud Performance Training. And we split the performance side away from the lifestyle side because we help a wide variety of people with Loud Performance Training into the Loud Lifestyle Training. So at Loud Performance Training and at Loud Lifestyle Training as well. And again, I just appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome, Derek. You're very welcome, man. Thanks for coming on. And I'll do a quick outro and I'll let you go. Okay.
All right.
Cool. All of you are tuning in to another episode of Behind the Muscle Podcast. I just want to say thank you so very much. If you guys have not done so already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube in regards to Behind the Muscle Podcast. And then please take this episode with Derek, share it on your Instagram stories. Make sure you tag Derek, tag Behind the Muscle Podcast so that we know that you listened specifically to this episode and found great value in it, in which I know you did. And then finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.